As far as news cycles go nowadays, it's already in the distant past and forgotten about. But for those of us who are devoutly Catholic, and really for all French people, no matter their belief, the images of the burning of the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris are still very vivid in our mind. And we experience great horror and panic as we witness that beautiful cathedral engulfed in flames. We thank God for the brave firefighters and also people nearby who knelt and prayed to save the basic structure of the building, although much of it was destroyed. It was really, I think, something that made people realize how much, if they really think about it, the church has given to the world. That beautiful building, temple giving glory to God, it's an iconic structure. Really, and iconic in the sense that it conveys something deep and beautiful of our heritage. They say that it took about 200 years to complete the building of that cathedral. Have you ever thought about the workers who built it? Almost all of them knew they would not live to see the finished project. Yet they devoted their whole lives to building this. Why would they do that? They were not going to see the fruit of their labor in their lifetime. They did it because they did it out of faith. They did it to give glory to God, not to themselves. They did it in order to build God's kingdom, not their own. This is the Christian vision of how we are to live in this world. The sense of giving generously of what God has given us. For them, it was their talents, their health, their energy, their hard work. To give it for others, to do something beautiful for God, without expecting anything in return. Indeed, if we give to get back, it's not doing something that will be beautiful for God, because it is too self-serving. It is this Christian vision that enabled the church to accomplish so much and to give so much good to the world. Indeed, to build such a beautiful civilization. I can think of something very, very simple. We might not even think of it, but whenever you hold an ancient text in your hand, if you're reading a Roman poet, a Greek philosopher, or even the Bible itself, every time you hold the Bible in your hand, have you ever thought, how is it that I have these words that were written 2,000, some almost 3,000 years ago, and I have them here in my hand? How were these texts circulated? Certainly they were written by hand, but the Roman Empire fell, they say, around the year 450. It was 1,000 years from that point to the invention of the printing press. When the Roman Empire fell, civilization fell apart. It was like, I call it a massive government shutdown that went on for centuries. Everything was in disarray. It was the church that held things together, especially through her monasteries. Monasteries were not only places of refuge for prayer, but they were places of study, research, of teaching and learning. And so for 1,000 years, hundreds of thousands of monks spent their whole lives copying texts. The monasteries were even constructed for that. They had a room called the scriptorium, the writing room, that maximized the natural light. And they spent their whole lives copying these texts. And it wasn't just a mechanical thing. It was, again, to do something beautiful for God. They turned it into a form of art. That is why, to this day, people will go to museums to admire illustrated manuscripts. They take like the first word and make it an art piece, like a T forming a cross with vines around it, to show the cross is the source of life. And so many other ways too. That Christian vision to give for doing something beautiful for God. The whole area of healthcare is another good example. From the very beginning, those ancient times in Rome, the city of Rome, when a plague would break out, the people who had any means would flee to the hills, literally flee to the hills outside of the city of Rome. The poor were left behind, and the Christians stayed behind to take care of the sick. And not only their own, anyone who was sick, at risk of their own health and indeed even their own lives, because they had a different way of looking at things. Over the centuries, more and more research was done, especially in the monasteries, how to develop health care. And then in the Middle Ages, the church got the idea that, especially with the era of the Crusades, when people were being severely injured in war on both sides, the church set up a place called a hospital. A hospital brought together all of these different efforts of healthcare. The church gave the world the hospital. Research and study continued in these monasteries. They became communities developed around them. They were the schools. After a while, the church got the idea to do the same thing with learning. Put all of these different areas of learning together in one place. And it got a name that means everything in Latin. Because everything, they were teaching everything. Universum, all things, a university. The church gave the world the university. With faith and reason working together, because the church knows we need both in order to understand the truth. Each making its unique contribution and working together. So many other ways as well. And music, music, art, architecture. Even our modern musical notation. Any musicians among the Confirmandi? You play a musical instrument? You know how to read music? You know the 5 lines, the SAF, the 5 lines, the key signature and all that? Well, this group probably knows, most people don't, that it came from Gregorian chant. That notation of Gregorian chant, you can see it's an early form of that type of notation, with the 4 lines and the neumes, called square notes popularly. Well, there was a monk in the 11th century who figured out how to do that. Because before then, there was no way of writing these chants. They had these little kind of squiggly lines to jar the memory. They basically had to learn it by memory. And these little sort of squiggly lines to remember them, to remember when to go up and down and prolong and so forth. So Guido d'Arezzo figured out how to put this in a notation form that then gave birth to our modern musical notation and opened up a whole treasure chest of music in our Western civilization. This is the vision that the church has, and church has always lived. So my dear brothers and sisters, you who are about to be confirmed, the question is now accepting this call to live as a faithful Catholic. It means, what are you going to contribute to this legacy? What are you going to do beautiful for God? But do so knowing how much you have to be proud of to be Catholic. There are a lot of people in the world that want to make you feel ashamed to be Catholic. So they tell a lot of lies about our church, past and present, or a lot of distorted exaggerations. They don't realize all that we've been in. The area of science is another area. The monks developed the scientific method of inquiry. The church gave the world science, and has always had leading scientists in her ranks. But they want to make you feel ashamed. And instead, they celebrate with pride things they should be ashamed of, and want to make you feel ashamed of what you should rightfully be proud of. So know the legacy you have received. This is what you're being a part of, and saying yes to God's call to be a faithful Catholic in the sacrament of confirmation. What you do with your life is what you will create beautiful for God, using all the things He has given you, your talents, your time, your energy, using it all in order to do something beautiful for God, especially responding to the vocation God has given you, persevering to the end. Vocation is the way God is calling you to be happy, basically to be happy, to live with this Christian vision. You have to live that way if you're going to persevere for the rest of your life in a vocation. But that's what creates within us the capacity for love, to receive and then to give love, which makes possible communion, ultimately communion with God, which is the only thing that will truly make us happy, the only thing that we can bring with us when we pass from this world to the next. So my dear brothers and sisters, I'm happy to be here to celebrate the sacrament with you, and I pray that the grace of the sacrament may help you to live as a faithful Catholic, so that living with the Christian vision of giving in order to do something beautiful for God without expecting anything in return, you might know the real happiness that God wants for you.